dear sewing friends, I'm super excited about today's video because you already know that using your own existing clothes to create a sewing pattern that actually fits you is a pretty trusted and a very inexpensive way how to really make a pattern that goes a long way. So I've done that to my favorite t-shirt, I've done that to a pair of pants that fits me really well, and I've used those patterns time and time again. And today in my hands I have actually my husband's sweatshirt that is very well loved. It's a Raglan sweatshirt featuring a long sleeve, and it's like 5+ years old, so old that the fabric on the elbows here is just about to give in, and some other places as well. And he has hinted to me in the past that he would absolutely love to have a few sweatshirts with the same fit. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a Raglan sweatshirt, and it doesn't have to be a male Raglan sweatshirt for you. You can take any Raglan sweatshirt, and then we're going to trace it, and then we're going to sew it up. So let's get started. And as I mentioned, this is super inexpensive, so you will need some paper, you will need a ruler, and you will also need a pencil. Now, as of the paper, I'm using just regular printer sheets because I haven't made a trip to the store lately. But if you are thinking about doing this more than once, or you're really trying to get into sewing and making your own patterns, then here's a little tip for you. If you go to dollar store and you pick up those gift wrapping rolls just for $1, just make sure that you find a little note on the actual roll that says grid lines on the opposite side. Those are perfect for making your own patterns, tracing patterns, because they already have the grid lines that are inch by inch, and it saves you so much time and it makes it so much easier. So that's what I usually use in my tutorials, but today printer sheets will do just fine. Now the first step is to take your sweatshirt, to fold it in half, make sure that everything is nice and even, and then use a few of the sewing pins to pin it in place so that way it does not move during the process. Now this is a very crucial step for the success of this pattern tracing. Just remember that if you're using a very good sweatshirt that you're planning on wearing further, then make sure that your sewing pins do not leave any holes or any other markings on your sweatshirt. And you can always use sewing clips as well if you have those. I do not. Therefore, I'm using sewing pins. Next step is to take your sweatshirt and to align the edge of your sweatshirt with the edge of your paper. Make sure that your whole sweatshirt fits on a piece of paper that you have. Now we're ready to trace. First we will do the neckline, then the armpit, then the side seam. We'll move on to the bottom, and then we'll do the sleeve. I'm using a pencil, however I will be using a Sharpie to outline it so that way you can see a little better. So let's start with the neckline. First, you need to make sure that you don't mark the actual ribbing, but you mark the actual neckline. So just watch how I do it. So place a little mark on the front neckline, and then you will place a little mark where the back neckline is at as well. For your personal reference, you can also mark them F and B, where F stands for front and B stands for back. Next step for us is to mark the edge of the back neckline and the edge of the front neckline. And there are multiple ways how you can do it. You can simply do it by lifting up the sleeve and marking with a pencil. You can turn your sleeve right side in and mark it that way. Or you can simply take a pin and pierce it through so that way it would leave a mark on your pattern paper. So do whatever is best for you. Next, mark the placement of the armhole. And once that is done, trace the side seam and the bottom of your sweatshirt. Now, I will do a different hem of my sweatshirt. This one is rounded. I will do more of a straight hem, so I'm not doing the bottom just yet. After all of these are done, take your sweatshirt away and let's connect the dots. Usually, I draft my necklines by hand with a dashed curved line. If you're not sure about your ability of making a smooth curve, you can always use a bowl or a plate or a cup or any other round object to help you out with that. Next, outline the side seam of your sweatshirt, and if you have already done yours, bottom hem as well. Now, the original hem on my sweatshirt is rounded, and as I mentioned, I would like to go just for a straight hem. Therefore, I will let the bottom of the page to be the actual bottom hem of the sweatshirt since it matches in the length perfectly. And by the way, this is a little bit embarrassing, but I didn't realize how many men are out there who are watching this channel and are enjoying these tutorials, and I didn't realize how many men are there in general who sew. So if you are a gentleman and you absolutely love to sew, please say hi in the comments below. I've told you guys time and time again that it fascinates me how this sewing community brings together people from all over the world, and I absolutely love that. So please say hello in the comments below. And I hope that this tutorial gives you some inspiration of maybe making something super well fitting for yourself. One very quick last thing that we need to do before we really jump into making the sleeves, and you can skip this step if you want, or you can do it whichever way you prefer, because raglan sleeves can be so different and done in so many different ways. Now, the simplest one is just to leave it as straight as it is. However, this sweatshirt does have a curve, which usually leads to a better fit underneath the arm. So, take your sleeve, put it right side in, just like so, and then you will be able to trace that curve of the sleeve seam onto your pattern paper. Next, I take extra sheets of paper and then I place them on top of the bodice of the t-shirt that we just traced. And then I outline the sleeve of the seam so that way I know where it should match with the bodice. That just makes it a little bit easier for you to put it all together once you're done with your sleeve. Now, take your sweatshirt and lay it on top of these paper pieces. Now, make sure that all of your previous markings align with your sweatshirt, the front neckline, the back neckline, and the seam of the sleeve. Now, straighten out the sleeve and let's trace around it. Please note that we are tracing the front of the sleeve first, and after that, I'll show you how to complete the sleeve with the back side of it. And remember, you can always adjust the length of the sleeve as well. It doesn't have to be a long sleeve. You can always draft out, shorter sleeve, 3/4 sleeve, and a long sleeve as well. So just use your imagination. Really, sky is the limit. Now go ahead and cut out your sleeve. After that, in case if this curve of the sleeve where it connects to the actual body of the t-shirt does not match the curve of the seam on the bodice, I go ahead and I make them the same, because when you put them together, when it's time to sew, you want them to match. Now, of course, it's a little bit of a different story when you're drafting your own patterns. However, when you are tracing patterns from existing clothes, it's important to remember that things do distort once you sew it together. So this is what I do. However, you can do it whichever way you prefer, but you will see that once we sew this together, it will come together very neatly. Now, take an extra sheet of white paper and copy the front of the sleeve onto it. That will become the back of the sleeve with some minor adjustments. In the raglan sweatshirt or t-shirt, a lot of times the front and the back of the sleeve is going to be almost exactly the same, except for the height of the neckline and sometimes the curve of the sleeve. This time I'm not going to touch the curve of the sleeve, but I will of course adjust the height of the neckline, and that's what you see me do right here. Then go ahead and mark the direction of the stretch of the fabric so that way when you cut, you know which way to place your sleeve pattern. And of course, make sure that the curve of the back of the sleeve is matching the curve of the back of the t-shirt. And I think that my sleeve moved a little bit when I was tracing it, so I need to add a tiny bit to it, and that's what I'm doing here on the screen. Don't forget to mark the direction of the stretch of the body of the t-shirt. And now let's move on to drafting a neckline. For the neckline, it's really easy and straightforward. What you gotta do is you take your measuring tape or ruler or whatever you have. Now you measure the length of the neckline on the front and on the back, and then on the sleeve as well. You sum it all together and then you multiply that by 2. And after that, the length of your actual neckline is going to be 80% of that number. So for example, let's say the front and the back of my bodice plus the length of the neckline on the sleeve is 5 inches, for example. multiply that by 2 is 10 inches. Now 80% of that is going to be 8 inches, which is going to be the length of my actual neckline. The reason why it's 80% is because you will be stretching your neckline in place as you sew it, so that way it lays nice and flat. For the width of the neckline, I usually take 2 inches, which gives me 1 inch on the fold. Now, if your sweatshirt features cuffs and if you want to have cuffs, go ahead and copy that as well. Please remember that your cuffs will be cut on the fold. Here's another important thing to remember before we wrap it all up. This t-shirt pattern does not feature any seam allowances, but that is important to add them because those account for the amount of the fabric that will be taken away by your stitching. I usually do 1/4 of an inch all around, but you can do as wide or as narrow as you would like. That means you will add 1/4 of an inch all around your pattern. And that's it. You have created a pattern by using a sweatshirt that you already own. How easy was that? Pretty easy, right? If this is your first time watching my videos, then definitely subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. And then watch this channel for the next week because I will show you how I sew this up by using my serger. I cannot wait to see you guys again. Until next time, happy, thoughtful sewing, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!